All right, guys, and we are live, and I am here talking to General Han Solo, physicist, biblical scholar, and theistic evolutionist. I myself am an older creationist, and I'm still a Christian. I'm not unsaved because I don't believe the earth is not young. I'm not unsaved whether or not I believe that there was death before sin or not. I still believe there was a literal Jesus, a literal historical Jesus who lived, died, and rose again on the third day. Oh, and he died on the cross. Let me make that more specific because Jehovah Witnesses think he died on a Tudor stake. He died on a cross, like the Bible says he did. And so basically, guys, this hangout is in reference to a post I had made on G Plus on Google Plus, and basically, I had said that, theistic evolution is something that Christians should consider. It's reasonable if the earth can be old and if the fossil record and everything like that can be correct in the sense that, like, how we age it is definitely correct. We can't have confidence in that because our God is not deceptive. Then it's reasonable to believe that evolution could be true in the sense that Christians are not confined to adhere to one interpretation of Genesis. There are a couple of different interpretations that Christians can go to, and evolution is just one of the different interpretations Christians can go to if you feel led to believe it. But me, I think that the book of nature has to match with the book of scripture if God isn't a liar. And so I'm giving it reasonable thought. If evolution is true, it still wouldn't mean that the Bible is false. It still wouldn't mean that there isn't a God. It just meant that God used evolutionary biological processes for life to evolve naturalistically, which would actually fit the old Earth view, because most old Earthers don't believe in the sense that anything new within the laws of nature happened, right? So it's reasonable to believe. And so I made a post saying that, and oh my gosh, I didn't even say I was a theistic evolutionist yet, and I just got thrown under the bus, and now suppose I'm a heretic and I'm teaching false doctrine and I don't believe in Jesus. I'm not saved. And this is why a lot of people leave younger creations, because it is so dogmatic. I want to show you guys too. Give me a second. I want to show you guys the letter that was sent to me when I was a part of Let Creation Sing Ministries, a younger creation ministry group where basically it brings a lot of younger creation ministries together like a network. And so I was a part of Let Creation Sing, and I had basically told one of the admins there that, yeah, I don't think that the earth is young anymore. I'm doubting that. I don't think that God made the earth 6 days the way you do. I still believe it was 6 days nonetheless, but not the same interpretation of it. And he's like, yeah, we're going to have to kick you out of the group. And I'm like, what? So let me show you guys the proof of them kicking me out the group. Let me show you guys that. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. And people are still commenting on my Facebook page talking about carbon-14 dating. People don't believe in carbon-14 dating. Weird. So they say, dear Mr. Wayne Fillmore, we regret to inform you that as of the 16th of February, 2016, your membership in the Creation Science Alliance has been suspended. Your membership suspension is due to the following reasons: the realization that a member holds to beliefs that are contrary to sound doctrine and dependable science, or which clearly violates the agreed to statement of faith of our community. Now, I know in the community, True Empiricism and Steve were having a debate on whether or not younger creation scientists signed a statement of faith saying that real science cannot go against younger creationists. Well, I was a younger creationist, and I took one of those statements of faith in the younger creationist group, and here's the letter of them telling me I got kicked out the group because real science does not go against what they interpret to be sound doctrine. And so because I don't believe in the young earth, they kicked me out the group. They didn't even bother to have a discussion with me showing their evidence that the scientific method proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that the earth is young. And so that's when I came to the conclusion that young earth creationism is straight dogma, and they ram it down to people's throat, and they say you have to look at the plain reading of the text. But like I said before, a lot of younger creationists, they don't know the proper usages of the Hebrew. And also, the Genesis account isn't the only creation account in the Bible. There's about like 5 different creation accounts. So, General, you can take the floor, and you can say what you're about to say about like Tommy and what Tommy has said in G Plus, which is just ridiculous. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'll just I'll screen share the conversation, and I'll highlight some things. I think you can see my screen that I'm being shared. So this is the conversation. So Wayne says, I may be on my way to becoming a theistic evolutionist, and then you say, inbox me. And so notice you have Christians like Christian anarchists, welcome to the club. So there's genuine fellowship that can be had even before you became, or before you're even this title. Notice that Christians, there are Christians out there that think deeply on these issues, and they don't segregate, so to speak. And so you're still Wayne, you're still honest that you still have questions, and that's great. And so hence Christian anarchist is like, yep, fire away, don't worry. So one of your questions is in regards to the fossil record. Then just to skip down, I give my chart photo. I don't know if you saw that, Wayne, but the chart photo is designating the days of creation with respect to the epochs of the history of the earth. And when you read the Genesis account, it actually correlates very well with what we see in the fossil record. And not just that, but also in geophysics and all that. And then up here, finally, humans appear on day 6. So it fits a one-to-one correlation. Then Tommy responds by saying, I predicted this. You fell quickly. No. All that happened was Wayne pretty much started thinking deeply about this and connected the dots between the book of nature and the book of scripture. He didn't fall. And so then I respond by saying, I'll just skip, well, Tommy says here, the Bible explicitly states that death followed sin. Adam brought sin into the world. So and you'll see my response to Tommy. So when we skip down a little bit, even here on this Hangout, I'm going to repeat it for the 3rd time, that Tommy avoids discussing anything with me when it comes to biblical data. Oh, by the way, here's Thank You Jesus, who says it's unfortunate that Wayne's even thinking like this. And I'll respond to his thing. But basically, I pointed out that Tommy says, do you believe and say that death came before sin? And if so, you are calling Genesis a lie. So my response is no. Genesis and Paul, so Paul in Romans 8, affirm entropy and thermodynamics before the fall. And so I asked Tommy, how do you account for the laws of nature as depicted in Genesis 1 that Adam and Eve experienced in Genesis 2? These laws encompass everything we experience today, that being digestion, so they were eating, breathing, defecating, menstrual cycle for Eve. Clearly, she needs one in order to conceive. I take the notion that they were indeed engaging in sexual activity before the fall. Obviously, something as straightforward as their hearts pumping blood, because, for the sake of toxins buildup, you need that regular cycle of oxygen intake to overcome the toxicity of carbon dioxide. Their muscles producing lactic acid via the tilling of the ground. So notice Adam was told to tend to the garden. Well, surely if he's going to tend to the garden, he should experience the working of his muscles. No matter how fit he is, you will know how much to till. If you didn't have those feelings, then that means you would know how much to till. You'd know how heavy something is, for example. All of that presupposes thermodynamics. That means entropy and decay had to be there. And I refer to a Jewish commentary that basically aligns with that. Tommy doesn't even respond to me. He just responds to Wayne. That what evidence do you have in regards to chromosome 2 fusion? So I'm trying a different tactic. I'm basically showcasing evidence on the concordance model that I have by saying, well, in verse 20 of Genesis 1, you have this water life bringing forth reptiles, and then from waters it correlates all the way to the birds. And in the 4th century, St. Basil says that the waters give birth to birds. And he asks, why is this the case? And then he makes the conclusion that there's a family link, a monophyletic pedigree of birds and fish. And their common derivation from the waters has made them of, notice this term, one family. So, and I say the theory of evolutionists is, as is well known, that birds developed out of reptiles and reptiles from fish. Then my response to thank you, Jesus, the accusation that the flood must have been local. Yes, there's 2 places in the Bible that explicitly state that it's local. Noah must not have lived that long. Yeah, if you take the fact that the numbers are base 60 and not base 10.
Let me tell you guys something too. Last night, I actually changed my position from worldwide flood to global flood, but not worldwide. And I'll tell you guys why. People are like, "Oh my God, Wayne, you turned into a heretic." No. Yeah. a lot of younger creations. This is the game they play. Ken Ham is always like, you have to look at the plain reading of the text, right? And so my friend and me, I have a best friend. I've been best friends with him since about 1st grade, and me and him became younger creationists together. He got saved a couple years after I got saved. I was the one who led him to Christ. But as far as like the science and stuff like that, I get into the science and then I go back and I just tell him, this is what I believe. And he's like, I'll just do my own research. And so we both realized something when we both started finding misconceptions in younger creationism. Younger creationism is built off of misconceptions and plain readings of text that was not written in English, and they don't tell their followers or the audience, this is what this word really means, and reference to like even a lot of younger creationists will say, well, there couldn't have been death before sin. And even when they read like Romans 12, right, how they read that, they don't read it in Hebrew. They say, look at the plain reading of it in English. Well, why would we do that's? Not properly that's not using proper exegesis or hermeneutics. You have to read it from their line of thought and from their language. It's a different language. It wasn't written in English. And so the same way we read it wasn't the same way they read it or we interpret it today. We have to think of this from an ancient Northeastern Israelite or Greek philosopher or Roman philosopher.
Right. And here's something that I didn't even get a response from. So again, to thank you, Jesus, he says, what else can we reinterpret at the cost of theistic evolution? And I say nothing. It perfectly fits Christ's atoning work. And so Paul in Colossians 1:20 says, through the Son, God also reconciled all things to himself. And here's the key phrase, whether things on earth or things in heaven, making peace. So that means the entire cosmos through the incarnation. So if humans are not evolved, right, if there's no evolution, and ultimately humans are not connected to the cosmos, that we were basically a special creation, genetically not connected to anything, then how does Christ in the incarnation connect himself not only to human beings, but also to the entire cosmos so that he can reconcile the cosmos back to himself? It only makes sense in an evolutionary context that ultimately we are connected, to the entire universe physically, that Christ is able to redeem us and the cosmos. So I didn't get a response to that. All I see here is Tommy just messaging way. And
Well, yeah, it's basically rhetoric. This is what, and I know that this is what young earthers do. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna take you guys to my Facebook page now, where the same topic is being discussed right now as we do this live discussion. Um, no, guys, I'm not. I'm
yeah.
not a heretic. I'm saying I was you guys know, if you guys have been following my channel, I was a hardcore younger creation to the day I die. Even my background, even right now, even though this still matches the order of text, but this actually comes from one of Kent Hovind's seminars. And I still accept there really was a real beginning. There really was a real space and matter, heaven and earth. All those things really did happen. I'm not saying they didn't happen, but all I'm saying is there's a better interpretation besides younger creationism, and younger creationism is not the only interpretation on the block. As a matter of fact, this guy right here, this isn't even my post. This guy made a post in regard to my post. General, can you see it? Maybe I need to zoom in.
No, I can see it.
He said, you either believe the word of God is 100% truth or 100% lies. You can't just pick and choose what benefits you. Oh, I agree, but I'm not picking and choosing what benefits me. I'm looking at the evidence, and I'm like, all right, you guys are saying carbon-14 dating doesn't work, but it does work. It just doesn't work in certain conditions. You guys obviously don't understand carbon-14 dating. You guys are saying that entropy didn't always exist, but we know for a fact we can look back in time when we do astronomy and stuff like that, and we see stars blow up all the time. We see things happen where we see entropic decay all the time when we look back in the past, so it had to have happened. So, I mean, God isn't playing mind games with us. It isn't either certain things existed and they did exist at the same time. Either it is or it isn't. And I basically said, so I told the guy right here, I said, so are you saying that anyone who doesn't believe in a young earth isn't saved? And this guy says, I'm saying you can't just pick and choose what you believe. His word is his word, and blah, blah, blah. And basically I said, well, instead of just ad hominem me and straw man in my position, how about you just inbox me so you can see why I believe this? I'm an ex-young earther. I believe the same tenets you believe. And I said, come on, something had to have happened to have changed my mind. I didn't just start believing this stuff to fit what I wanted to believe. It's fit in the science. It's fit in the history. It's fit in the fossil record. I mean, I'm not just making this stuff up, guys. And let me go to my page, and so before I had posted this too. This is a quote I got from Christian anarchist. And so Christian anarchist actually posted this, and I think this is a very good quote that Christians need to live by, especially if you're in a scientific creationism. So basically, this guy Francis Georges, or whatever his name is, he says, once you realize that the Bible does not purport to be a textbook of science, the old controversy between religion and science vanishes. And that's how it's beginning to be every day. I had these tenets like, oh my gosh, secular science hate gods, and if you're a secular scientist or secular geologist or paleontologist or astronomer, you don't know the real ages of whatever you're trying to date, because you're really just trying to disprove the Bible, but you don't really know that because you've been trained that, you've been brainwashed that, and all these things that just weren't true. And so that's one of the tenets that we as believers need to. And so in this this post right here, this is the post I was talking about, where I was saying I was getting a lot of heat for, because I was basically saying, you know, what do I believe in proportional to the Bible and science? And I got all these comments from people who are like, oh my gosh, you don't take the word of God literally, right? And so most of the stuff these guys are saying is like basic Answers in Genesis stuff. You can go on Answers in Genesis website and you can see, right? You can see that these are the same arguments that don't really work. These are the old arguments that don't work. And that was one of the things that led me out of younger creationism. All of their arguments were old. They were not new, but not only were they old, but they were old and they all had been refuted hundreds of times. And they still keep using the arguments. If you go to the Northeast Creation Research YouTube channel, I think that's the name of it. They actually have a video where there's a guy talking about astronomy in this network or in this group, and he's a younger creationist, and he admitted, this was the same night I denounced younger creationists. I heard him he admitted it live on camera. He said, yeah, younger creationists have a real astronomy problem. And then he goes on to give astrophysics models that don't work. And he just admitted a couple minutes before that, yeah, these models don't work. So why would you believe that? It doesn't make any sense. So this guy, Marcus Lee, he says, gotcha. I'm still younger creationist. How was Adam and God made on the sixth day, 1 day old? And how old did he look? He looked older. He was created mature. Likewise, I believe the universe was created mature, having the appearance of age while not being so. And I said, I've been there, done that. You're just the order of creationists in denial. It's like a lot of atheists say agnostics are just atheists who have a wife and children. So, I mean, like, a lot of younger Christians who say, the universe could be created mature, but the information in it is 6,000 years old. They almost have it. They're so close to having it, but they don't. The universe does not appear to be mature. The universe is mature. And that's what they don't seem to get. Jenner, you can take the floor, bro.
When in the side chat I sent you a link, I recommend you bookmark that link.
All right, I got you. I'm about to do that right now.
Because I see that you're looking for Saint Basil and evolution, and that's from an actual authentic Orthodox site dedicated to Church Father material. And I will, 1 sec, I'm just getting feedback from you, Wayne. I'm just screen sharing. I just did a word search for Basil, or Basil, however you want to pronounce it. But about halfway through the article, even these scholars who study the Church Father material, so it's not me making this claim. So this is what they say. Following, and by the way, the title of this is Genesis, Creation, and Evolution by Vladimir D. Beer. How do you account evolution with the Genesis account? And they've done a brilliant job in showcasing early Church Father material in light of this current issue. And in regards to Basil, following the creation of the luminary bodies, which is the sun, moon, stars, God commanded the waters to bring forth marine life as well as birds. And St. Basil commented that everywhere the waters hastened to obey the Creator's command and brought forth for the first time beings with life and feeling. So this includes aquatic mammals and reptiles as well as amphibians. And check this out. In a striking anticipation.
I think you just connected the dots for me. I'm sorry to cut you off. I think you just connected the dots for me. I think I got it. All right. So between the younger and the older people, and they're like, oh, evolution isn't testable and repeatable and blah, blah, blah. And in an older framework, right? You know how I guess you would even say we're still in the seventh day, right? God rest. That's why he isn't creating
resting, yeah.
Right. And so the reason why, theologically, I'm just saying this theologically, the reason why you wouldn't see evolution on such a grand scale is, one, it takes too long, and two, that was when God was creating everything in the beginning. So because God isn't creating anything now, we wouldn't see evolution on such a grand scale like that. But
exactly, yeah,
it makes sense that it only happened once because that's when God was specially creating.
Right, and in fact, I'll just quickly go earlier in the text that actually says exactly what you just said, Wayne. But just quickly, so in a striking anticipation of the evolutionary concept of common descent, the Greek father wrote that the swimming motion of fish and flying motion of birds confirm their common derivation from the waters, making of them one family. So, and then I'll just go back a bit because he speaks. Here we go. This guy named Kurev, he did a study on the fathers, and so according to this person writing, it further transpires from the Genesis account that creation comes into being gradually, so that's the key term, the transition from one day to another being mediated by God's call, let there be. In response to the divine call, the earth gives forth life. Let the land produce vegetation and living creatures. Notice, let the land produce not just vegetation, but the land is going to produce living creatures. And so, in other words, a dialogue is taking place between God and the world, an interaction of appeal and response. This could also be seen as synergy between the Word of God, that's the Logos, that's Jesus, between the Word of God and the earth. And Kurev quotes Saint Basil again in this regard. Quote, "The earth germinates, but it does not sprout that which it has, but transforms it." Okay, let me reread that again. "But it does not sprout that which it has, but transforms that which it does not have, as much as God gives the strength to act." So as a result, matter is created with the potentiality of, here's the key phrase from an evolutionary context, the potentiality of self-organization, growth, and transformation, without the necessity of interference from outside. Now, this is key, because if evolution is not true, then you would indeed have to have what the young earth creationists say, constant interference from the outside, that God has to specially create each time. But if he's set in motion the biological diversities that can take place, then yeah, you have self-organization, growth, and transformation. So here, as early as the 4th century, you have Christian thinkers thinking in this way, and they didn't realize that, you know, science would actually pave the way in explaining it scientifically. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, I think I get it. I think I'm about to convert to theistic evolution. I have a few more questions and then I'll make my decision. But one question I have is so I know a lot of order will say the creation account isn't compatible theologically, or the evolution account isn't compatible theologically, because they say, well, the Bible specifically says that God made man out of the dust of the ground. And if you don't believe that God made man out of the dust of the ground, then that must mean that chimpanzees gave rise to Adam, to the first man.
Yeah, and let me just show you. I'll screen share my Bible software. So first and foremost, so you know how you know that the days of creation, that they can constitute a kind of like a telescoping. So do you know what I mean by that phrase, telescoping?
No, not really.
Okay, so for example, in Genesis 1 describes the creation of human beings. But notice Genesis 2 is basically telescoping. So think like a telescope. So you're zooming into the conditions of day 6, and the author of Genesis is now expanding more about day 6 in chapter 2. So he's telescoped into day 6 and has given the small details that we don't see in chapter 1. So this telescoping method is seen even in the grammatical structure of the words like day, because, like, you know, day 1, day 2, day 3, these are long periods of time. So it's a fancy way of telescoping this long periods of time with these phrases. So now in Genesis 2, you have the same telescoping nature of the creation of man. Because in Genesis 1, notice it's very plain. It just says that, like I've just shown, you know, after the fish become the birds, and in between the reptiles, now God's going to create man in his own image. So now how does he do it? So notice that all these living beings derive from the earth, right? If
Yeah.
Adam was not derived from other biological systems and basically the earth, then the text would not say that. But guess what? Just like the other organisms, God forms the man from the dust of the ground. So notice, I can telescope 3.8 billion years of evolution from basically stardust, the dust of the ground from past supernovas, that finally now we have the Homo sapien. Why? Because now the Homo sapien is unique compared to other creatures. Now, remember how I just shared from Colossians 1:20 that we have to be connected to the entire cosmos in order for Jesus to redeem the cosmos? Well, in Genesis 6, it's repeated that here in verse 7. Oh, by the way, I think this is, let me just zoom in, because I think this is small for you. That should be better. So Genesis 6 verse 7 says, "So the Lord said, I will annihilate these human beings whom I've created from," notice, "from the earth." Now notice, including not just humans, the animals, crawling things, flying birds. So these things come from the earth, including the humans. So there you go. There's the cosmos that have now, the immaterial, sorry, the non-living material has become living material. Just to use a very loose analogy there, that in the process of time, Jesus tabernacles and is able to redeem not just you and me, but the entire cosmos. And so that's the point of Romans 8. So in Romans 8, Paul says, "For I consider," this is verse 18, and this is also a refutation to Tommy. So, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed to us." Well, what is that doxa, the glory? Verse 19, "For the creation is eagerly awaiting this revelation of God's children." Well, what is that? Well, the creation has become subject to futility, and here's the interesting thing Paul says, not by anything it did. So young earth creationists will say, death came through the creation, because Adam is part of the creation, so death and entropy came through the creation. But hang on a second, the futility of the creation is not by anything it did. The one who subjected it did so in the certainty that itself, the creation itself, would also be set free from this corrupting bondage to share the glorious freedom of God's children. So that it can only, again, we have to be, evolution has to be true for the incarnation of Christ to not only redeem you and me, but also the entire creation, so that the creation can share in that freedom, in that redemption. The entire cosmos comes back to the whole, comes back to God, so to speak.
Right. The only problem, I guess, one of the last problems I have is I can't picture like speciation happening where you had the Neanderthals in the middle, right, and then you had the great apes like before them, and then you have, well, no, I think you had the great apes, and then you had people, and then the Neanderthals are, oh, somebody's calling me too. Bad time.
Busy day.
Yeah, I guess you converted. People are losing their minds. But the last thing, I guess, that I need to connect the puzzle pieces so I can go and tell other people. Because it's funny. I was talking to a younger creationist the other day, and I was like, well, what about this? And what about that? How come they never told you about this? And what about that? You still can believe in God and still believe in old earth. And he's like, wow, I never even heard this interpretation before. All of this is new. And I've been being told that the earth was 6,000 years my whole life. And I thought that modern science was wrong, but it's not wrong. It's actually compatible. And I'm like, see? So, but I guess the last thing to connect the dots is like, so evolutionary theory says there were all these great apes, but does it say anything about after the great apes, was there like a rapid explosion of people, or was there like, you know how the Bible said there was one man or one woman? How can we test it? Like, how can we test to see like there was a rapid explosion of like so the Cambrian explosion, right? And a rapid explosion of like
Right.
marine life, and then there was like a rapid explosion of what, like mammal life, and then like there was people and it just gradually stopped. Like, how can we test that?
Yeah. So I personally have been wrestling very seriously about the whole issue of the historical Adam and Eve. So I still believe in a historical Adam and Eve, but let me just illustrate to you um, my progress in that. So uh, at first, it a faith thing for me to go one man, one woman, no questions asked. There wasn't a, say, like a community that evolutionists would obviously communicate. They'd say, look, no, we're talking about a population of at least 1,000 hominids of Homo sapien, and not one man, one woman. Um, and I know that to be the case. I mean, that you can't suddenly bottleneck, evolutionary changes down to one man, one woman. It just doesn't work. Even though they do have in evolutionary circles, they do have this thing called Y chromosomal Adam and mitochondrial lead, but that doesn't mean that there's a single pair. So I think my contention was basically the Bible. So now here's the amazing thing. As I kept wrestling with it, and it's been about a year now, that notice that everything fits. I've showcased the scriptures and science to fit pretty much one-to-one. The only issue was this Adam and Eve thing. Even though I've showcased that the text does speak about human evolution, but what about specifically this pair? Was there a pair? So far I've come to realize that this word, or this title, Adam, that you see like here, Adam, can be connected with what the Jews would call humanity as a whole. And notice, like, also number 2 in chapter 2, Eve is referred to as the mother of all living. So that means these terms could be, even though these are historical people, and I still consider them to be historical people, but what if these were like a selected pair of an entire population? And I'll just illustrate by the way Paul uses the term Adam. So Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 says, verse 45, he says the first man. Now, when you actually look at the underlying Greek over here, he's not saying that this is like for the first time a man appeared. Just as because when he contrasted the way he writes, when he says the last Adam, and then again he repeats in 47, the first man, and then in the second stanza he says the second man. So hang on a second. The first man, like if you were to take that literally, that Adam is the first man, well, is Jesus the last? And by the way, Adam can mean man, or like humanity, mankind. So is Jesus the last man? No. There have been billions of human males since Jesus. Again, in verse 47, is Jesus the second man? No. The second man was Cain, if you're looking at the Genesis account. So that means these terms and these numerical descriptions are actually archetypal ways of saying that group of human beings have now become what Paul would call a new body, a new man. And he says that in Ephesians, where he, in fact, let me just do a word search. where he says that. Oops. I'm pretty sure he says in Ephesians. I think it's Ephesians 3. Oh no, Ephesians 2. Here we go. So theologically, speaking of the law being rendered inoperative, thus creating in himself one new humanity from the two. So notice you have a community in himself. So that means there's no strict. If you to then take this language and apply it to Adam and Eve, there's no strict that there was just literally just two people in God's cosmic temple, which is the Garden of Eden. There could have been a multitude of humans, but Adam and Eve were like the archetypal representatives of the humans that then banish out mankind. And in fact, the phrase mankind is used at the end of Genesis 3, where no more that mankind will partake of this tree of life. See, notice, man has become like one of us. There's no, God is not saying Adam has become like one of us or Eve has become like one of us. This is a very generic term to mean this group of people have become like one of us. So when I wrestle with this and I've actually teased out the fact that there's a lot of nuances in the text, it's become a more comfortable fit that I can, not only can I hold to a historical Adam and Eve, but I can also hold to an evolutionary worldview that this is an evolved group of people, well, hominids really, that is experiencing God and now have been disassociated from God. So yeah.
Right, and for the people who are watching, he's still a Christian. I don't understand the
And
big,
I'm still a Christian.
right, and so
doing Christ's work. Yeah.
I don't understand the false dichotomies where if you believe in evolution or even if you believe in the old earth, you're not saved. Those are not the tenets of what makes somebody saved. I have yet to read in 1 Corinthians 6:9, believing in the old earth will send you to hell.
Right.
Hey Drake, hey Christian.
Yeah, hello.
I'm here just listening. Actually, a little curious as to how you're reconciling some of the biblical narrative, but I see, well, just from a non-believer standpoint, it seems to be that the people who don't want to actually look into the scripture and understand that there are different interpretations of it and that these are translated texts, it seems as though they are the ones that draw this hard line, this demarcation between the true Christians and whatever it is that they consider people who don't believe exactly the way that they do. So I'm always interested in kind of the more highbrow interpretations and more educated interpretations of biblical texts and how it's reconciled with modern science.
I just said the same thing too, because even so, it all started with me with looking at the word day, and the younger Christians were oh, whenever the word day is used with a morning and an evening and a number, it only means a day. And look at the plain English reading of the text. Well, it says there's a morning and an evening, and it says that was the first day. So I'm just reading the text for what it is, and you're doubting God's word, right? Well, no, we're not doubting God's word. We're doubting that interpretation, because in the Hebrew, the phrases morning and evening aren't even used.
Well, yeah, I think what you're trying to get at is originally morning and evening would mean order and chaos. So you have this like an engineer chronologically depicting, okay, this situation, which say day one, the first stage, it's in an initial chaotic state, and now I'm going to order it. Now let's go to the second chaotic state, and then I'm going to order it, and let's go to the third chaotic state, and on it goes. And then finally, Adam and Eve is the last of that, that chaotic state to ordered state sort of thing. And so when God rests, there's no more going from chaos to order. There's no more going from evening to morning, as his terms originally applied. And so yeah, like you wouldn't, like if you just read the English, which is, I hate to say this, I mean the English is correct. Erev and Boker do mean evening and morning. But when you actually go to the roots of the words, if anyone knows Hebrew and ultimately Ugaritic, you come out with a brand new, refreshing insight into how they used to think, not just an English sort of understanding of it. And that's the sad truth of young Earth creationism. It's that it's nothing but an English based model, not the original, the way the early church thought of it, the way Moses would have thought of it.
Right, which goes to show that younger creationism is fairly new. So it's not the oldest interpretation. It's a new interpretation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
By the way, Christian Marcus, your mic is.
That's because I'm in a car.
You sound totally different, my friend.
Yes, I do.
Interesting.
I thought
Yeah.
Tommy Hall was going to come in here, but I'm actually happy he didn't come in here because we wouldn't have made any progress. We would have just been going back and forth about stuff that didn't matter. Tommy Hall.
Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting. He's gonna argue with atheists on the matter, but when General Han Solo or someone is trying to make theological points, he ignores them all and just continues to go with somebody else and argue with them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. But like I just showed you guys, even to the viewers, the people who believe the younger view, it seems to me as if they don't want to go deeper into the text and into the Hebrew, and it seems like they don't want to do the footwork to find out if this is really true. Like they don't.
I don't know what's so scary. It's apparently
Some
scary.
people don't like the idea. Here's why some people don't like it. The mainly thing they'll go to is saying, and God saw everything He created, saw that it was good, and then they'll ask about, was there death before the fall? And if someone said yes, then that person will say, well then that makes God a monster then, because He said it was good. So did He say death is good? That's the main thing. These people are scared of death. These people are not ready to understand the concept of death. And I don't know, maybe these people aren't willing to die for Christ. That might be one thing, because we're told to do that.
Well, even like the way I look at it, like just because there was plant and animal death, that doesn't necessarily mean there was human death. And also too, I was thinking about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I don't think it's necessary for, like, when we look at the fossil record, I don't think it was necessary for the plants and animals and stuff to necessarily die before sin, because when we carbon date these things and look at them in like the different layers, we're trying to find out how old they were when they did die. We're not saying that there was death 100% before the fall. We're just saying, when they did die, they died at this age, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're not saying that they 100% did die before the fall, but even if they did, it wouldn't make God evil.
Right.
So I guess that's another way to look at it too. They didn't necessarily have to die.
And Wayne already shared, like, from Romans 8 that
right, everything right.
was already it was in the wisdom of God that he had to create. Okay, well, you see, I've also been reading.
No, I understand because I know this is right. God makes His first creation, and this creation has some blunders and stuff like that, but He's making a brand new creation. I know the seventh day thing actually reconciles that very good. How God is still resting and stuff like that. He's making a new creation. I love that interpretation.
Right. It also goes like this. Like Leibniz, the mathematician, he wrote works on, that this world is the best of all possible worlds, and I liked what he had to say in the sense that here we have an eternal being, God. He's all powerful, all knowing. Whatever he creates, by default, has to be less than him, because if it's not, then whatever he creates is like him, which in itself is a contradiction, because if it's like him, then it would be eternal, not created. So whatever that comes out of him has to be less than him, and therefore, by definition, the probability is that the created thing will always tend toward chaos, no matter what. Because if it doesn't, then again you go back to that contradiction, that if it can remain for eternity a perfect thing, then it has to be an eternal thing as well. So he then proposes that since inevitably it'll tend toward chaos, this God, does he find a solution for that, where he develops the mechanism so that through whatever mechanism he does it, that this it's not a faulty creation, but that this creation can somehow be a creation and be eternally perfect. And so guess what? In Romans 8 again, around verse 29, Paul says that those whom he foreknew, he predestined to be, and here's the key phrase, to be conformed to the image of Christ. So Christ is the perfect sacrifice. Christ offers perfect salvation. Therefore, you and me, when we are conformed to him, that means in the new creation, for eternity, because we're clothed with who Christ is, and we have, we're clothed with his righteousness, we're clothed with a new nature that's after his image, then for eternity, we created beings can then be in the presence of God without chaos. And so that means God has to go like this, and this is his argument. This is the best of all possible worlds. In order to finally have that new creation to be realized, it has to go through this process in order to get to that next process.
I kid you not, and Dragnot, you are like a witness, because I think you were going to be a part of that broadcast I did this was a couple weeks ago, and I did a broadcast about why does evil happen, and I came to the conclusion myself that evil happens in the world and bad stuff happens in the world because that's the best possible way for it to happen. It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't the best possible way. And now, General, you just said this guy who predates me came to the same exact conclusion, and I said this like weeks ago.
And the maximum evil, do you know what the maximum evil was? The death of his son. So notice that, like an engineer, he's engineered maximum entropy. Hang on, Dragon. So like an engineer, he's engineered maximum entropy and evil by the death of his son, so that he can defeat maximum evil and hence maximum entropy. And now that he's done that, he's able then to basically not recreate without that ever happening again.
I like it. What I'll do is I'm gonna think about this, because as a matter of fact, and probably like in about like an hour and a half, the funny thing is I'm going to a college campus to witness with some of the people from my church, and the people from my church already know how I feel about like science and stuff like that, and people teaching bad science and stuff, and like always like changing your opinion as you get like different evidences and stuff. And so I use a different approach when I go and talk to people about like God and creation and stuff. I just got done talking to my church buddy, and he's like, you don't need to worry about stuff outside the Bible. The Bible proves itself. And I'm like, no, it really doesn't though. You need to test it. And he's like, no, the Bible proves itself. All you need is the Word of God. And I'm like, No.
Well, it's just been my experience back when I hate to cut in, but my experience, one of the things I really despise about really churchy folks and really pious individuals is that they preclude themselves from information. They're scared of knowledge. They're scared of learning. They're scared of a lot of stuff. And what's always been really odd to me is that you only find so many Christians who will actually go out and say, you know what, I want to learn more about the world to prove God's majesty. That's what I only ran across as I became an atheist, because you only see so many of them. And they don't understand that when they draw that hard line and say that, well, I'm just going to stick to my limited interpretation of this book that's been around for way longer than I've been around, and I'm actually going to exclude all the Christian scientists that contributed to science. Gregor Mendel, the father of genetics, was a monk. You literally have to spit in the man's face in order to propagate a lot of this stuff. And it's sad because there's been so many, the former head of the Human Genome Project, Christian. The man wrote a book called The Language of God. So it's like you spit in the face of them when they say stuff like that, and it's really it's to the detriment of other Christians out there.
And the irony is that the Christians have this bold claim of calling Jesus the Logos, right? Well, the Greek word logos means the reason for, or it can also mean logic. So, for example, biology. Well, in the Greek, the word logos is in biology. In geology, in the Greek, it has logos. So that means the reason for, bioorganisms, or the reason for the Earth, the way it functions. And so hang on a second. The Bible is the only thing you need, but hang on a second. Your God's name, the Logos, is mentioned in all these scientific disciplines as titles. And surely as a Christian, therefore you should be encouraged by learning these disciplines and giving a Christian apologetic, rather than just like, oh, that's the Bible is all you need sort of thing. And, yeah.
I think I'm going to make my stance right here, right now, and from a theological standpoint, because I think not only is it just the science, right, that gets in the way, but a lot of times it's getting the right theology around it to find out, all right, if this is true, how did God do it? And I can't see how God could have done it any other way. And like that's the thing that really mind screwed me with the whole younger creationism, because I spent probably like 2 years or maybe like a year and a half of just hearing over and over and over again, everything the secular sciences is teaching you is from the devil and blah blah blah, and it doesn't line up with God's word and all that crap. And come to find out, when you go deeper and deeper into the text and you get a richer understanding of what the Hebrew and the Greek and the languages mean, like I just said, it from the evidence, it seems as if the younger view is a newer interpretation, and from the evidence that I've looked at, it seems like the theistic evolutionist view is probably the older view. And so right now, right here, live, and people are going to be able to play this back for hundreds of years to come. But I think I'm going to go with the theistic evolution view.
Let's all clap for Wayne. No, that's awesome. It's awesome to hear, and I pray that you continue to grow like we'll always do. And by the way, you're younger than me, Wayne, and you still got years of excellent, by God's grace, excellent material that can come your way. And
let me tell you guys one more thing. I didn't really broadcast this out to everybody. I told Steve this, but I was hired as a school teacher, substitute teacher. I can teach high school science, social studies, English, Spanish, and art. Although, no matter if you're a science teacher, a social studies teacher, or Spanish, you have to teach the curriculum they give you, or you will get fired. So my mom's a third grade teacher, and so she was just prepping me on like what my lesson plans is, because you gotta have lesson plans, you gotta have curriculum and criteria. You just can't go in teaching anything you want.
Yeah. So Wayne, I definitely recommend. I noticed that you've been watching a lot of Mike Heiser videos off my channel. There is one video where he teamed with Hugh Ross on the extraterrestrial issue, the whole alien life issue.
I just was watching a video where he was talking about that. Hugh Ross is one view, and then somebody, like two other people in his ministries, have two other views. So it's pretty awesome.
Right, right. And in that video, the thumbnail photo should have, the collision of the moon and the Earth. Well, two bodies that create the moon and the Earth. But anyway, after Hugh Ross's lecture, because Hugh Ross argues that there's no possible life elsewhere in the universe, which is actually a very reasonable scientific model. But Mike Heiser gives, quite interestingly, the alternative view that what if there is biological life elsewhere, for the sake of argument, then how do we account for that theologically? And Heiser does a brilliant job in just the Bible alone. He doesn't even need to go to science, showcasing exactly what I've been telling you, that if Jesus came here, how does the atonement here affect, say, an advanced species like in some other galaxy? Like, does Jesus need to incarnate himself again on that planet, and do this whole thing again? And so it's connected to this, again, this thing called being connected to the cosmos, this evolutionary connection. And so Heiser's like, well, see these bits in the Bible? You may have read this many times, but you didn't really think about it. And so I've just shared a few examples of that.
Right, I agree. I 100% agree. But before I go too, so yeah, guys, I'm a theistic evolutionist now, and people can go and say I'm a heretic and this and that. But like, if somebody would like to come to me before they just throw ad homs and say I'm a heretic and stuff, come to me and ask me, why do you believe what you believe, or how do you come to this conclusion? I'll sit down with you and I'll tell you throughout this long process that I had, man. I'll tell you how I came to this conclusion, because I didn't just come to it over peer pressure. I mean, you guys know I was like, I'm not just going to believe this if I don't properly understand it for social construct. And so, I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm still a Christian. I'm still a theist. I still believe in the Bible. I still believe Jesus came and stuff like that. Nothing has changed.
No, I mean, of course, me and Wolf probably disagree with you on the God thing, but where you insert your God, your theology, that's on you. I mean, and that's why I was trying to get Jade in here, because she's really good with the history as far as what early church fathers actually believed. And if people would actually go and look and see what some of these individuals, like key individuals in science, almost all of them were theists. I want to say 90% of them had some type of God belief, and their discoveries, their contributions did not negatively impact their theology. It amplified it exponentially. And I wish I could remember the guy's name. He was early astronomer, and he actually wrote in his journal when he made certain discoveries. I think it was like the distance between here and like the sun or something like that, or one of the planets. And he's like, I'm looking at God's majesty or something like that. I really, like I said, I can't remember. That's why I want Jade in here. She's good at that.
It might be the guy who I actually just brought up a couple of minutes before you came in. I think it's like Saint Francis, something like that.
No, that it wouldn't be Kepler. It wouldn't be Tycho Brahe. It would be.
I think Neil deGrasse Tyson mentioned him in Cosmos.
Yeah, doesn't he? Isn't it with an O? His name starts with an O or something.
I need to go back and watch it, man. I really don't remember.
He was specifically the one who could develop the speed of light, and he could also find the distance of the sun as well. His name slipped my mind, but probably one of my favorite early science Christian thinkers is James Clerk Maxwell. the guy who made the mathematical, so he mathematically explained light, and hence we use Maxwell's equations. And it was just amazing to see in his devotions. He did good science, right? So he did the science. He didn't force in any theological thoughts into his notebook, but in his own devotions, since he was fascinated with this concept of light, he would then appeal to John and the Logos being the light of the world, and then he would make these beautiful theological connections outside his scientific work, and that's, I think, how Christians should be. Is kind of like when David in the Psalms thinks about the creation. So he does good science, and then in his own devotions he then just praises God about it, and that's really it. There's no, like what the young earth creationists do. There's no confusion and forcing the data to fit a certain view, and basically doing bad science and therefore bad theology.
Right.
And then there's no glory to God at the end of the day.
Like even in the order review, the order review is pretty reasonable, but I noticed something. Like when you said trying to get the science to fit their data, the biggest problem for creationists, and no matter what they tell you, the biggest problem or the biggest hurdle for creationists to overcome is the human chromosome 2. If they're honest, because there might be some who might just really think like it doesn't mean anything. But I know for me, and like even other like older creationists who are honest, if you go to Reasons to Believe, Dr. Fuzz Rana, they're like his science is there. He did a podcast and he was trying to explain away how human chromosome 2 doesn't point to evolution, and basically he never had any evidence refuting it. It was a special pleating fallacy. The same special pleating fallacy that younger creationists make with Starlight, he made the same one referring to human chromosome 2. He said, well, even though it does look like common descent, God could have done it that way, but we don't have any evidence that he did. We got evidence in the contrary.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where I differ with the Reasons to Believe, is that Reasons to Believe has stuck with a simple interpretation of Adam and Eve. And they seem to be neglecting John Walton's, or basically the ancient Near Eastern perspective of Adam and Eve, and that is this archetypal role of Adam and Eve. Right. And so basically, again, notice that Faz Rana, being a very good scientist, knows that yes, every time a new research paper comes out, there's always like further information in regards to evolution. He also legitimately counterpoints the arguments and gives good, he offers good criticism. But then the criticism is not evidence against it. It's just one of those. It's just a criticism that the evolutionary scientists will have to take stock and basically use that for further research, and then Fuzz is just left with, in my opinion, my belief system still stands because that's my conviction, and that's it.
Right.
So exactly. So there's no ultimate smoking gun refutation. It's just one of those gray areas, and he still decides to stay in that position in that gray area. So he's kind of like, he's secretly one foot in the door of evolution, but he prefers to be not in that for now. So
I mean, there have been stranger things. I've actually even heard creationists accept speciation, except they just won't call it evolution. So it's really weird, how they try to. Okay, let me adjust my volume. Someone do that for me. Does that help?
Yeah, it's still the same.
Okay.
I was just going to throw something in right quick. I may have missed some because I just now saw that y'all was on, and trying to get in here, I might have missed something about the human chromosome 2. That took place after we split from a common ancestor. So whether it's split or not really doesn't. I don't think it would really matter either way. If it had not fused, the evidence would still be there that our chromosomes match up pretty good to chimpanzees, with or without the fusion. That was just incidental, I think. It didn't have anything to do with us splitting. It happened after we split, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, and by
Yeah,
the way,
that's about
Dragnon,
right.
Dragnon, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
It was Roma's observations.
Roma who?
Let me just get his full name. Ole Roma, I think is how you pronounce it. Ole Roma.
Ole Roma. He's the one. They also locked him away, didn't they?
The
Originally.
Danish. Was he the Danish astronomer working in Paris?
I think so. He made a discovery. He announced it, and then I think they some of the other church fathers that didn't understand it, they locked him away temporarily. I have to actually see him, but that might be him.
It doesn't mention it here. Maybe. Wait, initial reactions. Basically, it was to do with the speed of light, and then he was able to do stuff with the sun as well. And he got the speed of light to about 315,000 kilometers per second. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's right. So Roma estimated that light would take 22 minutes to travel a distance equal to the diameter of the Earth's orbit around the sun. Yeah, that's right. So.
Okay. But yeah, I mean that's integral to anything that we do with like lasers, even with like just CD lasers. Like just think of if this guy hadn't been motivated to pursue these endeavors, more than likely his religious affiliation had something to do with it. Where would we be kind of, without that discovery? Not to say that it wouldn't have ever been discovered, but it did play a role. I don't know. It's just it's amazing that so many folks will spit in the face of all these other theists that came before them and contributed to science, and then just turn around and go, oh well, we could just cast it aside while also living off the benefits of all these technological advancements.
Right. But by the way, Wayne, this is for you as well. This is just to show you. Let me just open it up for you. This is just to show you how people used to think pre-Christianity about science. So I think I'm sharing my... Nope, no, I'm not. Let me just share my screen to you. So in the book of Sirach, it's a wisdom book. Let me just zoom in for you. Look at this. That concerning physicians and health. So honor physicians for their services, for the Lord created them. Their gift of healing comes from the Most High. Notice the Lord created medicines out of the earth, sensible. Now here's the interesting thing. Now this is a New Revised Standard Version, the Catholic Bible. But in the original Greek, this verse is key. Now this word for skill is actually science. So he gave science to human beings that he, the human being, might glorify in his marvelous works. And so by them, the physician heals and takes away pain. So by the science, the physician heals and takes away the pain. And the pharmacist makes a mixture from them, and hence he can make good medicine. So here's an example, pre-Christian, where science was a key integral part of the worship of God. So yeah, I thought you'd like that.
have a best friend, right? My best friend just inboxed me. He said, it won't be long till you don't believe in the resurrection anymore. And that's exactly what I was saying even before I had came to my conclusion. I kept on saying this over and over again. Just because somebody believes in evolution, that is not like a mere tenet for your belief in Christianity. Your belief in Jesus Christ does not determine whether God made the earth flat, round, cube in thousands of years, millions of years, billions of years, whether he used evolution or didn't use evolution, whether there's aliens out there or not. That is not what makes somebody a Christian.
Is this where I can say amen?
Amen.
That was good. That was
I mean, they're claiming it's not a salvation issue while acting like it's a salvation issue.
Yeah, they're gonna say that it's like a domino effect, or as Pillbox would say, it's like a cockroach. When you see one, there's more of them.
Definitely not a slippery slope fallacy.
So here's the thing. I mean, and people that say this, they don't actually take the time to notice what goes on with someone's theology. For example, ever since I became evolutionary creationist, as I prefer the term to be for myself, I've been looking more into certain things that are empirical, and I happen to find things about debunking the Jesus mythicist movement, and looking into this new series from my friend, the Inspiring Philosophy guy, and his series where he's trying to prove and make a case for the resurrection of Jesus, and he made a 45-minute video showing historical evidence for the resurrection based on scholars and historians and other things that we can make a case for historically for the case of the resurrection of Jesus. And I'll deal with atheists on that, but that's the thing. You see these Christians that will say, you know, we believe in evolution, you're going to start denying all these things. They don't know about this kind of other engagements because that's what they don't care about. They want to make their own narrow-minded vision of somebody, so then they have someone to pick on and annoy.
Well, I will say this. I think, in my own personal, unbiased, humble opinion, I think the theistic evolutionists might be a tad bit maybe smarter. I mean, I can't say that in any nicer terms. Might be a tad smarter than the regular, everyday Christians. And I say this because I'm a cessationist. And I came to that conclusion. I wasn't a full-blown cessationist where I didn't even know what a cessationist was, right? And then when I started like dabbling more into like the science and the scientific method and stuff, and how I found that, you know, science and theology can actually match. And so I noticed a lot of the people who believe in like the Pentecostal, like you know, pray in tongues type of thing, like they aren't really in touch with science, right? And so they're like, well, you know, we don't really need science to help us interpret the Bible. The Bible interprets itself, and they go off and they say stuff like that. And they're the same people who believe that if somebody has cancer, we should not give them chemotherapy. We need to pray over them. Just pray over them.
Yeah, that's definitely dangerous.
So these are the type of like Christians who we see on a daily basis. And like when people see those type of Christians, they think that's speaking about the rest of us, right? Who are like open-minded and actually digging and stuff. Like you guys know, like I've been digging into this. It's probably been like a year now since I've been doing my research and stuff and trying to just reconcile like what I'm seeing with the Bible. And it's been a long time up until this day. It's been so long. So it's not something that happened overnight. But if somebody's really honest and if they're really looking and searching to see, well, you know, is this scientifically true and is this theologically compatible, you'll find it because I found it.
I think the issue, you even said it took you almost a year and a half. Most people aren't going to put that much effort into their theology, and sadly, some of my family members are that way. It's whatever the church taught them is right. They're not going to question it. They've been taught not to question it, and they've been used to not questioning anything. And so when I said, hey, you know, there's a bunch of Christians on, you know, this thing called Google Plus, and you know, they have all types of different theologies, you know, you might want to check them out, you know. And so they weren't really interested in hearing anyone else's theology at all. And I mean, I'm not talking about atheists. I'm talking about other Christians, other professing Christians who believe a lot of the same stuff as you do. So why wouldn't you want to go and possibly learn? Because there are tons of Christians on here that I respect greatly. Fiona, Max hangs out. They do their fucking homework. And I cannot deny it for a second. So when folks have been just kind of trained to not think, that really hinders them.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said too, even like so for about like maybe like 2 years, right? I was watching Answering Genesis and the Kent Hovind videos and those things. They mess people up, and I would say like for somebody who really is looking for truth, stay away from that stuff. Don't look at either side very hard. And what I mean is like don't stick to a side, right? Don't have a favorite. Just look at the evidence where it leads you. Be for like I don't even know if this is possible, but be as unbiased as you can, and it will take a long time. But if you're really looking for the evidence, you'll find it. But if you say, you know what, you know, this is too hard, right, or this is too complicated, or this is such and such, then you won't find it because you're not putting the effort into finding it. And like I said, it seems to me that the younger view is a new American like standard view, and the theistic evolution view, that's actually the oldest view. And so like there's been a bait and switch and false dichotomy all around where the younger creationists are saying, no, this is the original view of scripture. And come to find out, their view basically comes from like the Seventh-day Adventist view. What's her name? You know what I'm talking about, General.
Ellen Page, is that her name?
Yeah,
Ellen G. White.
Yeah, Ellen G. White. And come to find out, yeah, that was a new interpretation, like the 1800s, and the theistic evolutionist view has been freaking professed for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, well, variations of it. Of course, before Darwin, there wouldn't have been evolution, but there was a notion that, well,
right, a notion,
when God put things in motion, they were put in motion, and that this hyper-literalism of the Bible is a fairly new construct that people have come up with without actually doing any type of research into the actual history of their own theology.
Right, like plain reading of the text type of crap, like I said, like the Ken Ham said. You have to look at the plain reading of the text, and then like, so that's another form of brainwashing, right? Where they say, oh, you can't look at the Hebrew or the Greek. You have to, and I know Kent Hovind, he says that about heroes. You know, he says that anybody who takes the old earth view, you need to be a charlatan or a high priest so you can understand the Bible. But the young earth do the same exact thing. Right, guru. Right, but they do the same exact thing because they're like, you can't understand this on your own, and even if the evidence says something different than your interpretation, then that just means that the evidence is just wrong.
That's incredibly biased. I can't even put the words how biased that is. But you know, I think they're more interested in the conclusion, which, okay, as a Christian, the conclusion has to be God exists, God put things in motion, which is fine. But when they start misinterpreting reality, then that's when you have to really ask, okay, if you're going to be a Christian and you're going to follow these certain tenets, and one of those tenets says, you know, kind of honesty is important, then at what point do you have to sacrifice your religious edicts to fulfill this conclusion that, you know, you want to draw from the beginning?
I 100% agree with. I'll tell you guys this, and even for the viewers that's watching, from me just being an intellectually honest person, I think I am at least. I was thinking, you know, either if evolution is true, that doesn't necessarily mean in a sense that God exists, right? And so I was saying, you know, either we can theologically explain how evolution is true, and if we can theologically explain it, it just means evolution is true and the Bible is wrong. And I got to go look for either another God or maybe there is no God. And so that was the conclusion I was coming to. And I'm like, you know, there is a way we can reconcile it and stuff like that. But honestly, if there is no way to reconcile it, it's fine. You know, let's say your religion isn't true. That just means that you need to find the best religion or whatever that matches reality. You can't, like you said, you can't reconstruct reality to fit what you want to believe about it.
Yeah, it's like that. Not all Christians take Genesis 1:1 and thereafter as exactly literal either. You know, so that, you know, by doing that, they can look at like evolution or the sciences and stuff, you know, better, because it's like what, allegory, parable, stuff like that. Because there's lots of things like that in the Old and New Testament that are not literal things that are going on. Like Christ, he would tell parables, and these were not actual things that had happened, but he was using the parable to explain like a spiritual truth or something. And he's putting it in a way that people could understand on their level.
Right. And then people have to understand too, just because you're not a younger Christians, that does not mean you don't take the Bible literally. That just means you don't take it literally in the same way they do in their interpretation. Their interpretation is not gospel.
Right. It's not that you don't take it literally. It's just that's a model that has failed in its falsification. That's all it is, really. It's a failed model, and there's many models out there.
Right. So we as Christians, the Bible says we're supposed to. I think it's 1 Thessalonians, right? Chapter 2 or verse 11. It says, "Test everything, hold fast to what is good."
5 verse 21.
Right, 5:21.
Yeah.
And so and it only seems like the order and the theistic evolutionists people are the only ones who even say this quote. The younger earthers, they even down the quote. The quote is, "We're supposed to look at the book of nature and see if it matches with the book of scripture." And like they don't even take even that. They're like, no, that's not true because the Bible, whatever the Bible says, is just freaking gold. That's not true.
Yeah. So do they like take into account things like now again I hate, you see, we bring a lot of information to the table, and so it kind of borders on it sounds like I'm boasting, and I don't want to appear like that. So just what you just said, that these people quote that verse, put everything to the test and so on. So then I usually ask, well, have you been the type of Christian to not only do good science but also good theology and biblical research? Like, for example, showcasing the ancient Near Eastern context of what the ages of the patriarchs really mean from a base 60 number system, like the Sumerian king list and how that connects and all that. So are these Christians, when they say when they quote that verse, put everything to the test, well, do they do a genuine scholarly evaluation of what they believe? I mean, this is meant to be the greatest thing on earth, this thing we call the Bible, and this person that we call Jesus. Where is the passion that you're supposed to have in evaluating every piece of evidence, in showcasing his gospel, his good news? And I find it sad that there's very few Christians who actually have the drive to do that.
I 100% agree with you, bro. And before I close, I guess anybody else wants to say something, like some closing remarks before I go? Nope, not really.
All I can say is, Wayne, you're doing great, dude. I mean, you're holding to your faith, but you're also looking at other things too. I mean, and questioning things. That's very. I really like that. I really appreciate you doing that.
Right, and as a matter of fact, if you guys want, you guys can look back at my videos. You guys can see the evolution up until this day, and look how far this guy has come.
Yeah. And you're like an example of like accepting these things does not hurt your faith in any way.
Right.
You're really
It
honest.
doesn't make you doubt your faith. Yeah.
And I've known Wayne. I first met him like last year. We kind of bumped heads, and now we're best of mates. So
I was arguing about a global flood, and I was actually rhetoric Kit Hovind arguments, and then I look at him today, and I'm like, holy crap! If somebody actually listened to this stuff and tried what he's doing out in the lab, they would die.
right.
So also too, I noticed something else too. So the ideas, the people who go around talking about intelligent design and stuff like that, they never do experimentation. And that's not a blanket statement. I mean, they don't have anything to bring to the table. They're obscene. They don't have any experimentation where they're like geneticists or like doing stuff with medicine, right? So I'm like, it bothers my head.
Well, I think about how I feel trying to talk to some of these guys like Tommy Hall, who in true empiricism, and it's like, okay, I understand you have a theology, dude. I got that. But there's a line where we go, okay, no matter what you want to believe, you simply cannot do it. Like, if I wanted to take any ID claim and go to my lab at school where I go to school at, my lab, and
Right.
try
And
and do something like, would you be able to tell me what I could do? No, they can't. And, like, that's an issue. That's a problem.
and Dragnaut, again, as a Christian, I should, and I have, when True Empiricism just released a video saying he was in hospital, to pray for him. So there's a sense of irony there. He's totally misapplying his argument about DNA and water, right? And here he's ironically and hypocritically relying on the very science that he denounces and misinterprets to sustain his health.
Exactly.
And it's hilarious.
You notice the IV drip in his arm?
Yeah. It's just, I know.
It's like, I try to stay away from it.
The IV drip is in my arm, but pray for me. I mean, for goodness sake, what about the fact that if God's working through the doctor, it's not like God's going to arbitrarily. If God is going to arbitrarily create a miracle and heal you, you don't need to be there. It's just anyway.
What I noticed is how many Christians attacked Brandon for what he said last night.
Who, Brandon?
Who?
I missed it.
Brandon Potasio. Wayne, you know what he said. Do you remember that?
That cluster. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
No Christians attacked that, but Wayne says he's considering evolution, and they just hop all over him.
What did Brandon Pistachio say?
He started out talking about methodological naturalism, and then he was trying to somehow tag on a supernatural element to it, that somehow we could discover that supernatural part of nature or something. And when people started asking him about it, he kept sidestepping and saying this, or what, or he would turn it back on them. Like say, someone asked him, "What is your definition of God?" as an example or something, or a God, and he would go and he would kind of hem and haw around it. Then he would put the question back on them. What is your definition? And everyone's trying to get out of him, what does he mean? What is he talking about? Dragon, it was like when you was talking to True, trying to find out what he was saying about stuff. You had to like cross-examine him, ask him all kind of questions to get something out of him. It's kind of the way it was with Brandon. And he was like my example I used, he was like, it's like you're trying to grab a hold to a catfish, and you got grease all over your hands.
Yeah. Trying
to talk to him was like that.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was so friggin' irritating and frustrating. You have no idea. Oh.
Well, that's why he's not a really big fan of me and Sam, because I think he really despises Sam, because Sam's like, look, you must impress yourself with his sophistry, but I'm not impressed at all. And Sam went in on him about that, because he does shit, like he'll throw out shit like that.
Yeah, a lot of it was between him and Sam.
Yeah. Oh shit! I didn't. Where was this at? Where was
last night?
It was on Steve's channel last night.
Yeah, Steve McRae.
Oh man, I missed it. I think I went to sleep.
Yeah, you missed out.
So wait,
as a Christian, he couldn't even concede, that he believed God created the universe. He couldn't even concede something that simple.
I'm sorry. He went so far at one time to say, well, he thinks that this God or whatever might have had something to do with creating part of the universe. So we're like, okay, well, if he only created part of it, then there must have been another God creating the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean,
or stuff like that. It was a bizarre conversation.
That sounds a bit sacrilegious. Even for me, that's
like... I mean, Wayne, is that not heresy?
Yeah, that is heresy. God didn't create part of the universe; He created all of the universe from a biblical framework. So if you don't believe that, then I would say, like, why do you believe in the Bible?
Yeah. That's really strange. I don't think I've ever heard of that. Like, well, no, God. No. Here's what happened. God created the Marvel universe, not the DC one.
Yeah. No one could pin him down on what he was trying to say, and that was so frustrating.
So Dragon, is that why Batman v Superman flopped? Because God created Marvel? No.
This time we will blame God. Yes. For this one occasion, we will blame it for that one. That was a terrible movie.
Dragon, it wasn't a perfect creation.
And to that, I will agree. That was a terrible creation. Oh, jeez.
I'm about to shut it down, guys. But I'm gonna be back around like 8 my time, 8 Eastern Central Time. I mean Eastern. I said Eastern Standard Time. I'm sorry, guys. I'm all over the place. But I will definitely talk to you guys later. All right.
All right.
All right. Sure. We'll be around.